As we all know, Game of Thrones concluded with Jon Snow riding off into the sunset, with Tormund and the wildlings beyond the wall, while Bran the Broken took the Iron Throne as the new king of the Six Kingdoms. But what does this mean for the future of Westeros? And more importantly, which great house will rise to take the crown back? Let's break down some lingering scars that will undoubtedly lead to future conflicts. Then stick around until the end because we'll use those scars to speculate on which house might start the next great war. Let's start with the most obvious point of contention: the fractured realm. We ended the series with no resolution to who truly holds power and legitimacy in Westeros. While Bran was elected king by a council, he rules over just 6 of the 7 kingdoms. The North is once again an independent kingdom under the rule of Sansa Stark. Meanwhile, Dorne remains relatively uncontested, though it could change hands pretty easily if either the Lannisters or Tyrells made a comeback. This internal division weakens Westeros as a whole. The scars of Cersei's tyranny still remain fresh in the minds of many lords and ladies, creating a breeding ground for resentment and rebellion. Old alliances have been broken and new ones forged in the fires of adversity. But they may not hold as everyone scrambles for more power, but the wounds run deeper than just a difference in ruling families. Betrayals run rampant through the series, and many characters are still harboring grudges and seeking revenge. For instance, Sansa has every reason to distrust Littlefinger after he orchestrated the death of her father, Ned Stark, and tried to destroy her own life. Similarly, Tyrion owes his freedom and allegiance to Bran, but he's also close friends with Missandei and Varys, both of whom were executed by Cersei. And what about Daenerys' remaining loyalists, like Tyrion, Grey Worm, and the remaining Unsullied? They return to Essos with their queen's fortune and a taste for vengeance against those who betrayed her. These simmering conflicts may boil over, leading to open warfare. Speaking of simmering conflicts, let's turn our attention north to the new Kingdom of the North. The Starks emerged from the series as major players, reuniting the North and winning back Winterfell. But old habits die hard, and the Starks have a history of getting themselves into trouble. Not only do they now have to govern an entire kingdom, but they also have to deal with the aftermath of the White Walkers' invasion, which devastated the North. Now, as much as I love Sansa Stark, she's not exactly known for making wise decisions. And with her enemy, Littlefinger, out of the picture, there's nobody to stop her from making disastrous moves for the North. After all, the North remembers. But the North might also resent. The North has suffered greatly during the series, losing countless men and women in battles against the Boltons, the Lannisters, and finally the White Walkers. With so much death and destruction, the North could become isolationist, turning inwards instead of reaching out to forge alliances with the other kingdoms. Instead, they may seek to expand their own power. The Karstarks and the Mormonts, 2 of the first men houses from the North, were never happy with the Starks' dominance and openly rebelled during the war against the dead. If they feel Sansa isn't doing enough to protect the North, they could easily rally support and cause an internal conflict in the newly independent kingdom. And who knows what secrets the other houses are hiding? It could be anyone. Just ask House Frey. But the North isn't the only wild card heading into the future. As the survivors of the Night's Watch, the wildlings and the children of the forest return to the ruins beyond the wall, they'll need to find a way to rebuild their communities and lives. However, without the threat of the Night King looming over them, these groups may turn on each other. The wildlings have always been portrayed as savage raiders, while the children of the forest were once protectors of the land who resorted to darker magic to fight back against the invading humans. Even the Night's Watch had its share of deserters and meisters seeking to exploit wildling labor. Given that each of these factions have historically oppressed one another, it's possible that in the absence of an external threat, they'll turn on each other and unleash a wave of violence that could shake all of Westeros. However, the threat may come from further afield. Though the Iron Islands seem to be fairly minor players in the overall story, they should not be underestimated. Yara Greyjoy currently rules over the Iron Islands, and she has the full backing of the Ironborn Kraken cult. While she did swear fealty to Bran the Broken, the Iron Islands have always operated with a degree of independence. And remember, the Ironborn are known for their skill in raiding and pillaging. So it wouldn't be surprising if Yara and the Ironborn sought to assert their naval superiority and take advantage of the weakened state of Westeros. But where will the first battle be fought? I think the answer is clear: the Vale. The Vale has remained mostly untouched throughout the series, although it played a pivotal role in the War of the Five Kings. Littlefinger ruled as Lord Paramount from the Vale, but he was ultimately killed by Sansa. With no strong leader to guide them, the Royce and Arryn houses are likely vulnerable to takeover. And given the strategic importance of the mountain pass that leads to the Vale, whoever controls it has a significant advantage in any future war. Also, don't forget, Brienne is sworn to defend the Vale, but she's likely to be busy keeping watch over the now captive Catelyn and her baby. In short, the Vale is ripe for the taking. Any ambitious lord or lady could swoop in, solidify their power base, and use that to launch a full-scale campaign across Westeros. In fact, let's look at Dorne. Since the death of Balon the Brave nearly a century before the events of Game of Thrones, Dorne has been a fiercely independent region, constantly pushing back against attempts by the Iron Throne to exert control. Even after the series finale, Dorne remains unpredictable and could erupt into a new rebellion, potentially led by the Martells or the Danes. And let's not forget Euron's sister, Obara Sand, who seeks vengeance against the Lannisters. Dorne could become a flashpoint for conflict if the right person takes charge. But perhaps the greatest danger comes from within Westeros itself, namely the Riverlands. The Riverlands were the most ravaged region during the War against the Dead, leaving it a battleground between the Lannisters, Freys, and Tullys. It's a perpetual mess, and likely to be caught in the crossfire of any new war. Speaking of the Lannisters, they're left holding the bag after Cersei's crimes were revealed. Jaime may have redeemed himself in death, but the family's reputation is ruined. The Lannisters still hold Casterly Rock, but they lost key members of their inner circle, including Cersei, Kevan, Randall, and most of their allies. Whoever emerges from the Lannister ranks could seek to restore their family's honor, potentially sparking a new conflict. And let's not forget the bitter enemies of the Lannisters, the Tyrells. Olenna was the last surviving member of her family, and she died at the hands of Cersei. However, the Tyrells have survived wars and setbacks in the past. Perhaps one of their sleeper agents managed to survive the explosion at the Sept of Baelor, and they are waiting in the wings for their moment to strike back at the Lannisters. But perhaps the most unexpected players in the war will be the seemingly benign Faith of the Seven. The High Sparrow orchestrated the destruction of the Sept of Baelor and the deaths of several powerful Westerosi, but he also met a gruesome demise. However, the Faith militant has a long history in Westeros, and it would be unwise to count them out. If the Faith decides to re-emerge as a political player, they could throw the entire continent into chaos. So now the question becomes, how does this all play out? Who starts the next great war? Well, there are three possibilities. The first is dragons, or rather the lack thereof. Jon Snow rode Rhaegal into battle against the Night King, and he's the only living person capable of commanding Drogon. In the final episode, Tyrion mentions sending for the dragon, but realistically, we may never see Drogon again. The other two dragons are dead, and if Drogon is truly gone, Westeros has lost its greatest weapon against any external threats. Without dragons, Westeros is significantly weaker and more susceptible to attacks from Essos. Although we didn't see much of it in the series, the Free Cities are huge, and they haven't been involved in the main story so far. Maybe the strength of Essos proves too much for a divided Westeros, and the Golden Company returns to reclaim their former glory and plunder the riches of King's Landing. The second possibility is magic. From the ominous whispers of the three-eyed raven to the mysterious origins of Melisandre, magic has played a key role in the series. Ancient prophecies abound, and there's still plenty of unexplored lore in George R. Martin's universe. If a forgotten prophecy foretells the return of a great evil or a powerful hero, it could serve as the catalyst for the next war. And let's not forget the existence of dark magic wielded by figures like Melisandre and the Lord of Light. Any ambitious character seeking power could exploit these forces, plunging Westeros into chaos. But ultimately, it's the human element that makes Game of Thrones so compelling. The next war will be fought by people with agendas, values, and grudges. It'll come down to who emerges as the key instigator, leader, and ultimate victor. For my money, it'll be the Dragon Queen's child, Aegon Targaryen. His birthright will be challenged by other Targaryens or influential houses, setting off a chain reaction that will plunge Westeros into war. And when the dust settles, a new king will sit on the Iron Throne. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Who's your money on to start the next great war? And who will sit on the Iron Throne at the end of it all? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for new videos.